Welcome to GPP Chin Music. I'm Jason Gilbo, JGilbo11, breaking down some GPP bets at each position. 14 game slates should be definitely going better than the last night's slate that we had on our hands. So, looking at catcher, overall, I mean, you have Gary Sanchez, who's an incredible pay-up option with tremendous upside, but looking a little bit cheaper. I like Salvador Perez going up against Hector Santiago, fly ball pitcher. Definitely not a guy that I am shy away from picking on. You look at Santiago, definitely has some regression coming for him. It started to hit him last time out. Big fly ball pitcher, always has been home run prone. Salvador Perez, I like Minnesota. I don't think it's a bad ballpark, especially when the weather's warmer. So Salvador Perez always at a reasonable price tag, and it's kind of one of the guys who I think is going to go a little bit overlooked on tonight's slate as well. Another guy getting a lefty I'll take a look at is Robinson Chirinos. I don't mind Norris tonight just because Texas is awful against left-handed pitching, but Robinson Chirinos has always had decent numbers. If he slips up into the middle of the order, I'll definitely look at him. Norris, 1.41 home runs per nine against righties going back to last year. You look at Chirinos, I mean, over a 200 ISO in that span against Southpaws. Always has a lot of interest, just given the fact that he's been a guy who just kind of platoon bats in there and does pretty well. So I don't mind Chirinos at a really nice price tag on both sides. Getting into some of the bottom of the barrel guys, I'm not particularly thrilled. I kind of like the mid-range a little bit here tonight. But, I mean, if you're looking elsewhere, if Alex Avila's in there, I'm okay with using him. On FanDuel where he's catcher eligible, I'm okay with firing away there. If you do get some cheap guys, I mean, maybe you can take a look at a James McCann. I mean, usually I like targeting him against lefties more than I do righties, but Nick Martinez is a guy who doesn't miss a ton of bats, and I have a ton of interest in kind of stacking away with Tigers bats tonight. So definitely look at him. If Chris Herman's in the lineup against Jared Weaver, I'll consider him for a cheap price tag. I mean, he's basically at a pump play, but he's not a given to get into the lineup. He hasn't been that great this year, kind of riding the coattails of last year's success against righties. So, and it's also a downgrade in the ballpark, but definitely look at him if you're looking to punt and kind of play with the Chris Sale lineup or something like that. But Salvador Perez, Robinson Chirinos are two guys that I'll consider, and then of course the Tigers guys there too. So. First base, a lot of options here tonight that I like. I mean, we're kind of getting some guys taken away here as well. I mean, Freddie Freeman out 8 to 10 weeks. Miguel Cabrera is banged up. Victor Martinez on paternity leave. So we'll get some guys that we can consider. Joey Votto, lefty-lefty matchup, I am not concerned one bit. In that ballpark, I think it's a sneaky play here. Anderson's been up and down. He's starting to kind of figure things out a little bit here. Hasn't been bad against lefties. But overall, I mean, there's a lot of potential for Votto. This guy mashes lefty and righties. You look at Anderson, I'm on the season, 358 WOBA allowed, has allowed 3 homers to lefties already. So Votto, sneaky play. I will definitely be giving him a look on tonight's slates. I think if you're looking for kind of a chalk option, I mean, I still think Goldie might carry a little bit higher ownership, but not as high as if this game was in Chase. Going up against Weaver, there's a lot of potential for stolen bases and home runs. He's given up a ton. Even in Petco, I don't mind going that route. So I'll be looking at him. Looking for cheap guys. It's kind of tough to really dive down and get a great feel for some of these options just because the higher price guys are so much more intriguing. But Jose Abreu, I'll take a look at against Miranda, who's a fly ball pitcher, has struggled with home runs, even in that ballpark. You look at Abreu, I mean, over 200 ISO against lefties going back to last year, over 350 WOBA. The potential's there. Even in a bad ballpark, it'll drop his ownership down. So it's a solid leverage play against him, just because I do think that some of the other guys around him are going to get a higher ownership. But outside that, I mean, might be able to take a look at Kenneth Vargas in the middle of that lineup. I'm okay with him against Carnes, who is up and down. Kendrys Morales is on a nice little run there. I don't mind him for the cheaper price. So there are some cheaper guys you can consider. that I'll be taking a look at tonight. But for the most part, I think guys like Votto, Abreu are the pay-up options. I'll go with Goldschmidt as well, just for the high upside. But if you're paying enough for pitching, I mean, those guys are there to consider for value as well. Second base, and this one, I mean, if you're paying up, I do like Jose Altuve. He's been on a nice little tear, over 350 WOBA against righties going back to last year, over a 180 ISO. Comes in as one of our highest projected second basemen. I do like the Astros stack, so I'm going to like Altuve, of course. On the expensive side, which I'm hoping kind of drops that ownership down a little bit more, but definitely going to be a guy that I consider. Neil Walker, I know Nolasco's been bad against lefties, or been bad against righties more than he has against lefties, but Walker really starting to come around. I like the Mets offense as sneaky options tonight. Walker over 350 WOBA this month alone. Power extra base hits starting to come around for him as well, hitting in the middle of that lineup. So Walker is still at a reasonable price tag on both sides. Definitely be a guy that you should be taking a look at. If you're moving down the list here, you know, you can consider guys like, Cesar Hernandez, against Trevor Williams. I'll take a look at 3,200 on FanDuel, below 4K on DraftKings as well. Definitely has some upside. This is a guy who gets more on, is more of an on-base guy, and kind of does things that way. He's not a big power guy, but the potential is definitely there. I mean, if you're looking cheap, it's kind of hard to like. If Brandon Drury finds himself into the lineup, I'll consider him against Weaver. I know they're a little bit banged up, so we might see kind of Owens playing the outfield again, kind of as we've seen over the last few games, them shuffle that lineup around. But outside of that, I mean, not a ton of cheap guys at second base. I think the mid-range is where you'll sit. Neil Walker, Jason Kipnis, those guys are definitely intriguing options. Third base, I like Arenado here. I like Jake Lamb. I don't mind the pay-up options. I will go down a little bit cheaper. Justin Turner, I'll take a good hard look at. Hitting lefties really well. You look at Nicolino, average lefty at best. Turner has never been a bad lefty hitter. I mean, unlucky, hits the ball hard, fly ball hitter, kind of what you like there, hitting the middle of that Dodgers lineup who has a reasonable run total tonight. Turner's going to get lower ownership out of these third basemen, so I'll definitely be looking his way. Miguel Sano is going to be a tough guy to fade away. Carnes is a reverse splits pitcher, fly ball pitcher as well, allows a ton of home runs. Miguel Sano, this guy's just absolutely on one. I mean, extra velocity, if you haven't seen, already leading the league. Sano's a guy I'll be plugging into a ton of lineups for the upside. So if you're looking for cheap, Castellanos, a guy I'll consider against Nick Martinez. You look at Castellanos over 200 ISO against righties going back to last year. Martinez is a guy that I will be picking on with a ton of Tigers bats. I like the potential for all those guys. So once again, you'll find me talking about Tigers in the stacking pod if you haven't got there. I like him here tonight as well. If you're looking for kind of more of an off-the-wall, Eugenio Suarez, I'll take a look at. Taylor Anderson's kind of bounced back in his last two starts. Suarez is really solid against left-handed pitching, over 200 ISO going back to last year, over 370 WOBA. Really nice price tag on him. Good ballpark. I like this Rockies-Reds game for some offense. Vegas does as well. There is a lot of potential there for some upside. And the fact that Suarez is on the cheaper side, with that potential, he's a good guy to fit in with your sale lineups and everything like that. So I like Suarez quite a bit in that one. We'll be definitely looking his way. And outside of that, I mean, we might see a couple guys cheaper pop up into the lineup, like a TJ Rivera going up against Nolasco. Nolasco's been reverse splits. Rivera hasn't been bad against righties. So if he's hitting second again, I'll definitely consider him for a cheap price. Looking at shortstop, you really do have a couple of pay-up options you can consider. Carlos Correa, definitely red hot right now. That speaks for itself. Going up against Bauer, who's been all over the place. I like Correa as a pay-up option. Definitely not a must play, but he's a guy I will be looking as kind of the premium pay-up of a shortstop because there aren't a ton of guys that I really like. I mean, Corey Seager, he definitely can hit a lefty, but still on the expensive side. Zach Cozart as well. I think if you're still looking cheap, Tim Anderson, if he finds himself in the top of the lineup against Miranda, I definitely like him a bunch. He's had a couple of multi-hit games in a row, been on the stronger side against lefty pitching in his career. still on the cheaper side, so he'll definitely be a guy that I take a look at and feel pretty good about, even in all formats. But I do like him in GPPs because he will get some lower ownership. People kind of overlook him. If you're looking elsewhere, I mean, that's kind of it. I mean, cheap guys you might get pop up. Depending on what the lineups do. I mean, we've seen Defoe pop into the lineup every now and then, especially with the struggling Trey Turner. Jose Iglesias, maybe some of these guys pop up into the mid to top half of the lineup. So keep an eye on it. For the most part, I think that Anderson's probably going to be one of the cheaper guys that I roll with tonight. I think balanced is the way to go if you're not going that stars and scrubs approach. So I'm not a big fan of all these punk guys right now. Looking at outfield, there's definitely a lot of options to consider. Mets lefties, I'll definitely take a look at going up against Ricky Nolasco. A lot of power from Conforto and Bruce. Charlie Blackmon's in a really good spot in a really good ballpark against Bonilla. Obviously Blackmon, not bad away from Coors, obviously not as strong, but still Blackmon's a solid hitter away. Him and JD Martinez are definitely going to take the cake as far as guys with tremendous upside tonight. Martinez is absolutely on fire. He's going to get the huge ownership, but definitely a guy that I don't mind right now and don't mind fading. Look at the Marlins bats. They didn't get to the lefty last night, but Ozuna and Stanton are still on the cheaper side for DraftKings. I can definitely consider using them in tournaments still. On a 14-game slate, they'll definitely be a lot lower owned than they were last night, which makes them better GPP plays. If you're looking at the Houston lefties, you look at Bauer, really struggling with lefties this season, 40% hard contact rate, has allowed 6 home runs. Josh Reddick, Carlos Beltran really stand out as two guys that I'll consider for a cheap price. Good ballpark there, starting to come around. Houston bats really in play for me tonight. If you're looking elsewhere and trying to get to kind of those lower teams, I mean, Diamondbacks might have a couple guys in the order. If David Peralta's in, I don't mind him against the lefty there, or against Weaver there, sorry. Weaver obviously struggles with lefty bats, struggles with both sides of the plate. Pecco is not that bad for lefty power, so I'll definitely be considering him. Franklin Gutierrez, if he's in the lineup for the Dodgers, good option there. Same with Yasiel Puig if he moves up into the top half of the order, coming off a home run last night. Nicolino is a guy that I will certainly fire away against with right-handed bats, even with Dodgers bats who aren't notably strong against lefties, but that's why they draw the lower ownership. So he's in play there. Nelson Cruz against a lefty, always worth a look, even if it's Quintana. This guy absolutely mashes left-handed pitching, and that's an obvious one. If you're looking down lower, Carlos Gonzalez, only 2,900 on FanDuel against Bonilla, all considering that ballpark. Cargo really hasn't been a tremendous option, but I'll definitely still consider him and try and be ahead of the curve on that one. Other than that, I mean, we can move down. Obviously, I said Peralta's still on the cheap side. Franklin Gutierrez on the cheap side. Puig's still on the cheap side. So you do have some decent value bats in this outfield. In the mid-range is still not that bad either. Lorenzo Cain's a guy I'll take a look at. Should draw some ownership against Santiago. This guy has notably hit lefties well in his career. People are off of him as well. Maybe you see a couple platoon bats for the Rangers, but like the Shields pop up and I'll take a look at him. But for the most part, the Rangers are awful against lefties. So that might be the only one to really consider. So let's wrap things up here. You can head over to dailyfantasycafe.com for all great tools and content.